Many people today, when they hear science says, they're hearing that, oh, reason says, the facts say, that's reality. Really, when many people claim to say that science says, they're making statements that go way beyond the scientific evidence. And the danger of believing in science says, as opposed to genuine science, is you're really creating a new authority figure. You're treating claims made in the name of science as the same as what the scientific evidence actually says. And that's a dangerous thing, because although science is a really good thing, it can be misconstrued, and humans are frail, and so humans are the ones who have to interpret the scientific evidence. Sometimes science, which is a really wonderful thing, can end up being abused for really inhumane things. What is science's proper bounds? How can it do good things, but also what are some of its limits? And what are some things that we need to really be skeptical about to make sure that we get the benefit of science and not a curse of science? What is scientism? Scientism is the claim that the only way we have access or knowledge of the world is through science, and that really science is the only way that we can know what's true in the world. So that means other things like religion or philosophy, that doesn't give us access to the real world. Only modern science and its methods give us access to the real world. Scientism as a worldview is alluring to many people because modern science, everyone can see, is a good thing. And whether you use your microwave or your iPhone or something in between, we all can see the benefits of science all around us, and we use it every day. We use it in modern medicine. And so there are all these great benefits from science. People have gone to the moon, and we're trying to go to Mars. And so when you see that, the cultural prestige of science is huge. And so it can be easy to be lulled to think, well, if science is successful in some things, then, well, that means it's really the sum of all knowledge. That's how we can get knowledge about everything, and we should trust it for everything. But here's the problem. If you try to think that science provides all the answers to everything, you are sadly mistaken. C.S. Lewis once made a very interesting statement in a book that he wrote called The Abolition of Man, where he basically said that science and magic are twins. On the one hand, it might seem, well, this is insane. Science and magic, how they could be twins? Magic is about magical thinking, it's subjective, it's not based on evidence. Science is based on evidence, cool and rational. But I think Lewis is right that, in fact, there are a lot of similarities. One similarity is actually that both magic and science can function as a religion for many people, and actually can lead to a lack of skepticism. If a magician says, oh, I can do this magical thing and trust me, you should just believe it, it sort of lends to you not being so skeptical. Well, similarly, when someone says science says, you can be just very unskeptical. But one big way that magic and science are similar is the quest for power. So if you're the great magician, you want power over the world. Think of Fantasia with the Sorcerer's Apprentice, with Mickey, and the great wizard is able to control all sorts of things about the natural world, and that ends up getting Mickey in trouble. Magic has always been partly about the quest for control, the control over nature. Well, science is pretty much the same thing. A lot of modern science, from atom bombs to fighting disease to creating new technologies that surmount our limitations, creating airplanes that fly, a lot of science is about exerting power over the world. And that can be good if what you're trying to do is good. If you're trying to heal a disease, that's a great thing. But power can also be directed at some goals that aren't good, that dehumanize people, or that try to basically eradicate one group of people over another. And so this makes science both useful but also dangerous. When scientists or people claiming to speak in the name of science make moral claims, say that we should have eugenic abortions, that we should kill handicapped kids because that would be better for society, they're making a claim that goes way beyond science. They're actually making a claim about human value and morality. And how do they test that in the lab? I mean, how do they use their scientific method to come up with that? They don't. They actually are smuggling in their own moral and philosophical beliefs through those claims. They're insulating them from your own criticism of them by claiming that they're science. Let's think about the whole debate over climate change. There are people claiming in the name of science that we have to have certain particular public policies, like maybe zero net emissions, or you name the policy. Maybe that policy is good, maybe it's not. But the point I want to make is that's not just a scientific claim, and that it's not just scientists who have the right to weigh in on that. Climate change is a great example because when many people say, well, the science says this, they're actually covering up for the idea that there are multiple different questions that they try to fuse together to try to support. So if they're going to say, we have to be net neutral and the science commands that, or science says that, or if you're against climate change, you are, against science. But again, if you actually look at what's being debated, there are multiple different questions. One is, okay, are we warming? That's one question. Science says something about that. And then what actually is causing the warming? Well, then that's another science question. Another question is, well, what are the potential things we can actually do about it? And then finally, given the alternatives and how expensive certain things might be and the side effects of various policies, what would be the best thing to do about it? Those are multiple different questions, and to claim that science with a capital S gives a declaration about all of them, in a simple soundbite is preposterous. And I think the most dangerous thing about people who claim science says, therefore you must do, is that they're usually covering up that there are multiple different competing questions, and the science may say different things on different questions, and that the final question is, well, what should we do about it, isn't just a science question. You might think the science is overwhelming that we are in a warming period. And I think there's pretty good evidence that we are in a warming period. But then you might say, well, but the science isn't so clear as to what parts of the warming come from human action, what parts come from the sun, what parts come from natural cycles or other things. There's a question of, well, even if we're warming, even say if it's all human interaction, what can actually be done about it? Then that's still another answer to the question that science may say something different about. And then finally, well, okay, maybe we can do something about it. Maybe it will only do something marginal, but it will cost $1 trillion and put loads of people out of work and make people hungry. Well, then you have to reconcile, well, what's the best to do under the circumstances given these competing interests? It can be really hard to deal constructively with someone who is in the grip of scientism. One thing that I found useful, but even this is challenging, is to talk about some cases from history, because things today are so polarized. So if you bring up something that's today, people already have chosen their view on it, and so they can't really, they don't want to budge. But if you bring up something like a misuse of science in the past, like eugenics, which is this effort by the scientific community to leverage what they thought Darwinian biology was teaching, that we were going to destroy our race if we counteracted the law of natural selection. So therefore we had to basically control breeding, if you will, from people who were considered inferior by law. And they thought this was scientific. I think most people today recognize that that was an abuse of science. And so bringing up a case like that and explaining that the leading scientists at Harvard, Princeton, Columbia, Yale, the National Academy of Sciences all supported eugenics and supported laws basically mandating eugenics, and that now we realize it's wrong, that's an example of why you should want open debate and discussion. So I think that bringing some historical examples where people now recognize that something wrong was done can maybe get them to think, well then, isn't that still true today? And a more recent example, the whole COVID pandemic was very, in real time, an interesting case study, because for 2 or 3 years, if anyone raised any questions like, well, did this start with a lab leak, for example, you were shut down as anti-scientific, beyond science, shouldn't even be allowed legally to say what you were saying. Now, in just the last couple of years, the situation has opened up where people have recognized that many of those things that were considered, well, conspiracy theories just to even question, now actually many people think might actually be true. So maybe, COVID, I don't know how it started, but maybe a lab leak was involved in it. But you can actually question that. And so in real time, we've actually seen in our own life where so many questions were declared closed, and you're anti-science for even raising the question. And now people recognize that that's not true. And so I think if your interlocutor, if you will, who's in the grip of scientism, you can bring up even some more recent examples where you could say, well, do you think it was wrong that people should have been able to debate the evidence about whether COVID began with the lab leak, or debate the evidence of lockdown policies and how good those were or not? And I think that many people might be able to see that there is some benefit to that. And so questioning them about some examples from history where it's shown that there was sort of groupthink for a while, even in the scientific community, and it would have been helpful to have a more open, robust discussion. I believe with John Milton, let error and truth grapple, and you hope that out of that you'll have a clear idea of the truth. I think you'll certainly have a clearer idea than if you just close up and can never question anything.